Greetings, my beautiful people, mini movies recaps here. Today I will recap a 2017 movie titled, The Upside. Spoiler ahead, enjoy. The movie opens with Del Scott driving Philip Lacoste through the city of Chicago. They are followed by police after Del starts to speed up. He bets Philip that he can lose the cops, and he does for a moment until they corner him in the streets. They force Del out of the car until he tells them that he was rushing to the hospital because Philip is having a seizure. They see him foaming at the mouth and then escort the two to the hospital, but they are just faking it and laugh over the cops believing them. 6 months earlier, Del is a recently released convict who is meeting with his parole officer to try and turn his life around. He must obtain a number of signatures and hand them in by the next day. He goes around to different workplaces with little to no interest in what they offer other than the signatures. Del's last stop is Philip's home. As he is a quadriplegic, Philip interviews several candidates alongside his assistant Yvonne Pendleton for the position of Philip's caregiver. Del waits for over an hour to be called in, and he barges in during an interview demanding to be met because he has to go meet his son. Philip decides to listen to Del's story, and when he mentions doing time in prison, Philip asks what he was in for. Del tries to change the subject by turning it around on him and says that he must be offered the job after being asked that question. Philip does so, but Del declines, as he is not interested in being hired and only wants the signature. Del goes to a school to pick up his son, Anthony, but he is told by someone that his mother picked him up. Del visits Anthony and his ex-wife, Latrice. Neither of them has much interest in Del trying to be there now, what with him being absent for most of Anthony's life. It doesn't help that he and Latrice live in a crummy apartment that is falling apart. Del gives Anthony a storybook for his birthday, except it's a book he swiped from Philip before leaving. Del asks Latrice to spend the night since he got thrown out of his apartment, but Latrice doesn't want anything to do with him and instead asked him to leave. Del is contacted by Yvonne to come back as Philip wants to hire Del for the job, simply because he was the worst and least qualified candidate. She doesn't trust Del due to his criminal history and is concerned about how Del will handle Philip, but he assures her he can do a good job. Yvonne establishes a 3 strikes rule on Del to make sure he doesn't screw up, and she lets him know that the job is a live-in position, and it pays very well since Philip is so wealthy. Del's first job was to take Philip out of his bed and puts him into his chair, but Del forgot to buckle him, nearly making Philip fall. Del starts off rocky as he isn't quick to respond to Philip's calls via opera music, or he just makes things like feeding Philip his breakfast a daunting task. Del meets Philip's nurse, Maggie, who shows Del how to take care of Philip physically. This involves demonstrating the use of a catheter and how it is applied, to Del's discomfort. Maggie told Del if he can't handle this, how is he going to handle cleaning his butt? Del went to Yvonne and tell her he is not wiping anyone's ass. Yvonne told him that is a part of the job, and give him his first strike. However, Philip insists to Del that he follow a strict DNR, do not resuscitate, rule if Philip stops breathing. The following morning, Del slept away and was woke by Yvonne, who was paging him to come and take care of Philip. This earned Del his second strike. Slowly, Del starts to adjust to Philip's needs and acts better. He helps Philip organize his mails, and when it's time for Del to take Philip to the art gallery, Del decides that he is not putting Philip in any paddy wagon and instead took him in one of his supercars. At the art gallery, Philip purchases a painting for $80,000. On the way back, Del asked him why would he pay so much for a painting. Philip told him it is a one-of-a-kind painting, a part of a collection he has at home. Like some books his wife gives him, one for each year they were together. After getting his first paycheck, Del goes to find Latrice and gives the whole thing to her and Anthony. She is somewhat pleased until Del asks her to get the book back from Anthony since it wasn't his to give. Latrice gets upset once again and tells Del to do his own dirty work. He then goes to find Anthony but finds him talking to a suspicious older man. Del misses Anthony before he enters his building and has to leave when he got a text from Yvonne. Around the same time, some kids were messing around with Philip's car that Del was allowed to drive. When he returns to Philip's home, Yvonne calls his absence his third strike and tries to fire him until Philip clarifies that he allowed Del to take the car to see his son. That night the DNR, do not resuscitate, test came into play, as Philip appears to be suffocating, but Del, insisting he needs the job, gives Philip oxygen and forces him to breathe. Del takes Philip around the city and gives him a joint to smoke to ease the pain that Philip feels in his legs. During their walk, Philip tells Del how he became a quadriplegic. His late wife, Jenny, was suffering from cancer at the time, And so Philip proposed that they go paragliding to take her mind off of things. It was this accident that rendered Philip immobile. He cries as he thinks about Jenny. Del tries to cheer him up by taking him to get food. During their talk, Del also discusses potential business ideas he would like to get into with Philip's help. On the way back home, Del asks Philip if his dad leaves him all this wealth he has. Philip tells him his dad left him nothing and he earned every penny he has. When Philip asks Del about his dad, Del told him his dad was an artist, a con artist. Maggie was running late, so Del had to change Philip's catheter. It took him a while, but he got it done, with Philip teasing him in the process. Del finds out that Philip is in an epistolary relationship with a woman named Lily Foley. They maintain a correspondence without having seen pictures of each other or hearing each other's voices. Del goes through Lily's letters and finds a phone number. Against Philip and Yvonne's words, Del calls Lily, but they only get her voicemail. Del encourages Philip to say something, and so he asks her to call him back whenever she can. Philip joins Del as he takes Anthony out for the day. Everything goes well and they have fun until Del asks Anthony for the book back, and Anthony realizes it belongs to Philip. He gives it back to Philip but walks away from Del. Del and Philip go home to find that Yvonne has organized a surprise party for Philip's birthday. He is displeased, as he doesn't want anything like that. He orders Yvonne to get rid of the guests while he and Del have an argument, which leads to Del smashing things for Philip's catharsis. They decide to let the party continue and mingle. Del even gets Yvonne to dance. Meanwhile, a neighbor named Carter that Philip can't stand approaches him about Del's criminal record and to reconsider keeping Del around for the sake of the other residents in the building, but Philip ignores Carter. Yvonne then goes to Philip to tell him that Lily has called back and would like to set up a dinner date. Del sits with Philip in a restaurant a few days later as they wait for Lily to show up. Philip gives Del a check for $50,000 for a silly painting Del did, but Philip wants Del to put it to good use and invest it in a potential business. Lily then arrives, and she insists that Del doesn't need to be there to help Philip. However, during the meal, Lily admits that while she knew about Philip's condition, the whole thing wasn't what she was expecting. Philip becomes quietly offended and tries to leave, but he accidentally bumps into another patron, and then a waiter who spills hot coffee on his lap. The staff clamor around Philip to help him as he insists he can't feel a thing. Del goes to pick Philip up and return him home, but Philip chews Del out for arranging the whole thing with Lily since he now feels like a fool. Philip then fires Del. Time passes by, and Del decides to spend Philip's check toward buying a better apartment for Latrice and Anthony. He gets a new job working with auto parts, but he is approached by Maggie, who says that Philip has gone through several other caregivers and hasn't communicated with any of them, and he just won't talk to anybody else, which has led Yvonne to leave. Maggie tells Del that she thinks Philip will listen to him. Del goes to find Philip, who hasn't had a shave in a while. He takes him out for a drive, which leads to the encounter with the police and faking a seizure. They flee before the nurses arrive with a gurney. Del continues to drive out of town until they reach a spot where Philip can relax. Del arranges for Philip to go paragliding again to get over his fear of it, but Del unwittingly has to join him. After the event, Del brings Philip to a house where he surprises him by having Yvonne show up. Del leaves the two of them to catch up while he goes to spend the day with Anthony. The movie ends by letting us know Philip and Del remain friends to this day. Thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoy the recap, subscribe if you are new here, and check out our channel for more awesome videos.